Hi. So someone in the class asked for a little more clarification about I'm going to change to blue. Non-permissible values. When something's non-permissible, it's basically not allowed. And when we have rational expressions, so something with variables, and we have a variable in the denominator, we want to make sure that whatever we set the value for that variable, we don't allow it to give us a 0 in the denominator. So for example, if I have 3x squared over x plus 1, and I want to know what values are not allowed. If I think about different values for x's that I could use, I can try some out. So we're going to try a few out. So we could say, okay, first x equals 0. Well, let's substitute that in. If x equals 0, then we would have 3 times 0 squared over 0 plus 1. When I solve that, 0 squared is going to give me a 0. 0 times 3 is 0. And at the bottom, I have 0 plus 1, so I'll have 1. Now, you can do that division because 0 divided by 1 equals 0. It's not undefined. So that one works. If I try x equals 1, I would go 3 times 1 squared over 1 plus 1. And I would solve this. So 1 squared is 1. 1 times 3 is 3. And then on the bottom, I have 1 plus 1, which equals 2. So again, I don't get undefined as my answer. Now let's see what happens if we made x equal to negative 1. Well, on the top, I would get negative 1 squared. And then on the bottom, I would have negative 1 plus 1. Now, negative 1 squared is 1. 1 times 3 is 3. On the bottom, though, I get negative 1 plus 1, which equals 0. And what I get is undefined. And if you try that in your calculator, you're going to get undefined. So what this tells me is that x equals negative 1 is a non-permissible value. So for my solution, my NPV equals negative 1, or I can write that as x is not equal to negative 1. Now, I do a little formula to figure that out. What I do is I take what is on the bottom and I set up an equation using a not equals equal sign. So I take what's on the bottom, x plus 1, and I make it not equal to 0. What I'm basically looking for is what value for x will make this equal to 0. Make this, talking about the x plus 1. That's what I mean by making this equal to 0. Now, you can often look at that and say, oh, well, if x was negative 1 plus 1 equals 0. So I know that I can't use that. I like to set up equations because, particularly when you get to fractions, setting this up will help you solve. Now, how do we solve this equation? Well, I'm solving this equation using my rules. So I have x plus 1 on this side. So to move it to the other side, I'm going to subtract 1 from both sides. So if I have x plus 1 minus 1, I'll be left with x. And then on this side, 0 minus 1 gives me negative 1. So then I have my solution. Okay? So that's basically what we're looking for. Now, when we have a monomial on the bottom, so if I had just 2 over x, that's really straightforward. because it's just the x on the bottom, it's the only thing there. I don't want x to equal 0, because if it did, I would have 2 over 0, and that would be non-permissible. So x is not equal to 0, because otherwise you'd get 2 over 0, which is undefined. Okay? Now x can be anything else but 0, but it cannot be 0. Now, some people were having some trouble with the ones that give you fractions. So let's look at one of those. Say I have 3x squared over x times 2x plus 3. Now, there are 2 factors in the denominator. There's the x, and there's this factor, the binomial, 2x plus 3. I do not want either of them to be 0. So neither, oh boy am I, you can tell I've had a long day. And I don't really want to use green. I'll use red. Neither factor can be 0. So the x is easy, because we just basically say x can't be 0. That one's easy. There's one of our NPVs. Okay? For the other one, we have to set up that equation. So we do 2x plus 3 is not equal to 0. And then we follow our rules for rearranging. So I want to get x by itself, because I want to know what x can't be. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to move the 3 over. So it's added here. So I'm going to subtract it. And if I do something on one side, I have to do the same on the other side. So I have 2x plus 3 minus 3, which leaves me with just 2x. And then on this side, I have 0 minus 3, which leaves me with minus 3. Now I want to get rid of the 2. The 2 is multiplied on this side, so I'm going to divide both sides by 2. And on this side, it will factor out, and on the other side it will leave me with my answer. So I will get x is not equal to negative 3 over 2, and that will be my other NPV. Now I hope this clarifies for people. Really the question we're saying is, what value for x will make the factor equal to 0. And that's what we're finding when we're finding NPVs. Okay? So hopefully that's been helpful. Feel free to let me know if we're still confused. We can move forward.